Let's move on then to the Trump section, because this really gets to the prisoner's dilemma that I was talking about earlier. Let's put this up there on the screen from the Washington Post. Some very interesting reporting about how the shadow race is now underway for the GOP nomination. And this is a direct quote from one of Trump's own pollsters, quote, "They're all going to run against him." And so the people that they point to that are openly musing about taking on the president possibly is, number one, his own VP, Mike Pence, who's publicly broken with him, who has come out and endorsed Brian Kemp, did a rally there right after Trump, so clearly putting himself on different sides of Stop the Steal. The Jan 6 hearings allege that Trump apparently affirmingly said that they should hang Mike Pence. I mean, he says he didn't say it.
He said,
whatever.
well, no, okay, so.
Yeah.
What they allege is that he said of Mike Pence, like, maybe who are people in the Capitol were chanting, like, hang Mike Pence.
Yes.
That part we know. They built a gallows outside.
Right.
That part we all know, right? The reporting was that Trump said, maybe our supporters have the right idea.
Oh, okay. All right.
So he denies that he directly said, hang Mike Pence, but nobody was saying that he said directly hang Mike Pence. Okay.
Do I believe that he said it? Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyway, going back to this. So Mike Pence has been openly huddling with some of the DeVos family about his donors and his vision for the Republican Party. Number two is actually Tom Cotton. He's been developing a PowerPoint presentation about how previous candidates failed. He's been showing it to donors. And recently, Tom Cotton was actually booked for an appearance in Iowa. And then number three, I think the most formidable possible candidate in this race is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has been talking about the margins for his 2022 reelection. Remember that he ran 3 points ahead of Trump, actually, in the state of Florida. And look, DeSantis is an extraordinarily popular governor. He razor-thin won the election in 2018. Now he's got a 60-some% odd approval rating. He became a national Republican icon during the pandemic, during the lockdown strategy. He's been pioneering a lot of these Own the Libs bills, from Don't Say Gay to CRT, which have been very popular in the state of Florida, no matter what you think about them. He has raised teacher pay, actually, so the teachers' unions are kind of cool with him. He's been trying to save the Everglades. So, you know, you can't really put him in a box in a lot of different ways. He's a very, very popular Republican figure, and I would say he's kind of the I would say he's like the poor man's Trump choice for a lot of the DC elite. They have kind of reconciled themselves. They're like, well, Trump, I can't stand Trump, but like Ron, he's okay.
He's like dollar store Trump.
He's like a dollar store Trump. But here's the thing. I mean, can he actually beat Trump in a head-to-head nomination? Let's put this up there on the screen. There was a lot made of this straw poll at the Western Conservative Summit. DeSantis actually beat Trump in that straw poll. He won 71% of the vote compared to Trump's 67. So, okay, that's interesting. That kind of shows you amongst the conservative faithful. My friend Jason Willick, let's put this up there on the screen. He's been tracking the prediction markets. So you can see, DeSantis is now actually ahead of Donald Trump in the prediction markets. As
yeah,
to
but they got Nikki Haley number 3.
Right.
That tells you how seriously to take these things.
Yeah,
LOL.
so look, if you were to short that, I would short it personally. So I'll just say what I think, Krystal, and I'll get your reaction.
Yeah.
I think it is cope and fantasy that anybody could beat Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup. Do some of the GOP not like Trump? Yes. Does he still have an extraordinary level of affection, faith, and love within the base? Yeah, he does. A tremendous amount. So even today, in an unfractured race, let's say it's DeSantis versus Trump, and many people might even like Ron DeSantis, but the idea of moving on from Trump, I mean, the way I would put it is like this. Trump is a celebrity cultural figure, iconoclast, who also happens to be a politician. DeSantis is a politician, and he is not even close to the level of, like, it's hard to describe, but like, you don't see people walking around with "Let's Go Brandon" t-shirts that seem to align with Ron DeSantis. Like, it's all about, it's the Trump movement. He created new voters. He inspired, but I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm just giving you analysis.
Yeah.
Trump himself inspires tremendous loyalty beyond the idea of politics, which I think is conceivable to a lot of DC elites. And so they feel comfortable to say, like, oh, Ron DeSantis could beat him, and they'll point to some poll here or there, and they'll show that Trump can't transfer his popularity to a David at Purdue. Neither could Obama, but Obama was still tremendously popular, amongst Democrats. So I think Trump is an even more Obama-like figure within the Republican Party. He really is the next Ronald Reagan in the idea that, people are not putting Ron DeSantis' face on T-shirts. Like, they're just not.
Ask yourself, even as maybe Trump's endorsement doesn't mean everything that it used to mean, whose endorsement would you rather have, Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even close.
Right.
It's not even close.
Great point.
I mean, DeSantis is like a Trump copy. He is like you said, a poor man's version of Trump. I mean, he's stylistically different, but I'm not sure in a way that's actually beneficial for him. I mean, Trump is extraordinarily gifted politician at certain things, and DeSantis doesn't have that level
Trump is an entertainer.
of charisma and sort of like personal appeal.
Yeah.
So I think it is cope, and it's like a cope horseshoe of like the sort of Republican elites, and the type of activists that would be at a conference like this who want to, fancy themselves as really committed to the ideas. That's the whole sort of idea of getting behind Ron DeSantis is like, oh, it's the Trump ideas, but without the Twitter account or whatever. And then elite liberals who also want to believe that maybe the Republican Party could move on from Trump. So it's this sort of like horseshoe of cope that feeds this type of narrative. I also just don't really think that DeSantis would be dumb enough to go up against Trump
See, that I don't know.
in a primary. You think he's high on his own supply?
I don't think he's high on his own supply. I don't think he has another shot. So, for example, the lesson of Chris Christie was he should have run in 2012.
Yes,
and he
definitely.
made a massive mistake by waiting until 2016. Look, DeSantis is hot right now, whether you like it or not. Like, he's got the juice. He's got all these people in Florida. He's got a tremendous voter base. He's got a national ID. 4 years is a freaking eternity in politics. So if DeSantis waits that out, he'll be he'll be old, two-term governor, sitting in the mansion. Maybe the moment will have passed him by. I mean, personally, I think the most rational choice that DeSantis could make is to run. Black swan events could happen, right? Trump is 79 years old, something like that. He could drop dead tomorrow, and we have no idea. He could have a heart attack and die during
What would Ron DeSantis, what would his critique of Trump be?
So I've seen, here's what, DeSantis' soft critique, and the first one that he's ever floated publicly against Trump is Trump is the one who instituted these lockdowns, and I'm the one who pushed against him. But here's the problem, lockdown juice, there's no juice
that's over.
really in that today. Like, I can see in my head Trump ridiculing DeSantis in a primary on the stage, being like, he grovels like a little girl for my endorsement, and now he's here talking about me. He probably has like audio of Ron DeSantis begging him to do something because he's a vindictive man. He hates Ron DeSantis. He wants to be the king of Florida, and the idea that anybody wouldn't bow completely to him, which Ron has kind of refused to do so far, drives him crazy, especially, and this is a rightful thing, Trump saved Ron DeSantis' ass in the primary in 2018. DeSantis was down like 32 points in that primary. He endorsed DeSantis. DeSantis shot up, won the nomination, and eventually he won governor. So DeSantis does actually owe him for his endorsement back then, which mattered a lot more, and it was a very close election. Everybody thought Andrew Gillum was going to win. It was kind of a shock.
It was close too, yeah.
Anyway, more what I'm saying is Trump has the credibility to say, DeSantis, asked me for his endorsement, and now he acts like, groveled to me like a little girl to come in. I can just see it in my head, the way that he would ridicule him. And look, DeSantis, I'm not denigrating him. I think honestly he'd be a way better president, I think, than Trump. He's not crazy. I would happily vote for the man if he were to get through a GOP primary, but I just don't see it. Like, I don't see any possible way. I mean, like I said earlier in my prisoner's dilemma, for people who are just watching this in clips, I think DeSantis would beat Biden easily by like 53, 54% of the popular vote. That being said, I see no way that he could get through a GOP primary.
Yeah.
So I really don't know. I really don't know how. I'm just giving you the analytical view. I think it's Trump's party, period. And I think everybody just has to reconcile
Even
reconcile with that.
Put the last element that we have up for this about this Politico article. Better than Trump, DeSantis' clout swells in the West. This goes into that straw poll that we referenced earlier. And even so, the straw poll is weird because it was like DeSantis bested Trump 73 to 69 or something like that, and was like, those numbers don't add up to 100. The way that the question they ask is,
like ranked choice.
Who do you want this person to run? So it's not even who would you pick. in a head-to-head matchup. It's, do you want this person to run for president? And so because Trump is a more divisive figure, it makes sense to me that he might get a lower number than DeSantis, who within the Republican base, I mean, he is divisive in terms of nationally, but within the Republican base is a less divisive figure. But that doesn't answer the question of, okay, if your choices are Trump or DeSantis, who are you ultimately picking? And to your point, the fact that Trump has a much more loyal following. And plenty of average Republicans across the country don't even know who Ron DeSantis is. Right. So that will enable Trump to be able to define him however Trump decides to define him. I don't see what the DeSantis critique of Trump would ultimately be. I just can't imagine how he like separates himself and makes a real case for why people should go with him instead of the former president. So yeah, I don't see it. And I'm much more skeptical that he will ultimately jump into the race. But who knows? I mean, the crux of that first article we showed was basically like, Trump is not clearing the field. Yeah. I don't know. I think you'd take a look at the numbers and you'd be hard pressed to really think that this was a worthwhile use of your time this time around. But we'll see.
Here's the thing though. Who wants to be Chris Christie? I mean, look at him. He's like denigrated to ABC News. Like,
is DeSantis, he runs for re-elect. He's running right now for re-elect?
So I guess he's.
So he'd be he'd still be a governor, next time around.
Oh, he'll be the governor regardless. But it's more saying, look, 4 years from now, the narrative is not going to be anywhere even close to COVID. Florida right now is rightfully booming. I think that's the thing is that at the end of the day, DeSantis could make a positive case. He's like, look, I got Florida through this pandemic. Our economy is doing better than every single other one. The liberal media hates me, so that's all the credential that you really need. And so I see a world where if Trump doesn't run for some health reason, I think he would probably win the nomination. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I just don't see any way that Trump doesn't run. And barring a black swan health event, which, look, you obviously can't rule out, but you never know. Unlikely. Trump seems to be he honestly looks skinnier than he did while he was in office.
It's probably a much healthier lifestyle.
He looks much better than when he was in the White House. The Sun seems to agree with him. So given all of that, you just have to assume that he's probably going to run. I don't see a world that he would beat him. That being said, if I was him, I would run. I don't think that you don't have a chance. Like you're gonna be much older. The real lesson is that politics is a moment game, but you also risk, being dramatic, losing.
I don't
losing
see
in a humiliating fashion.
I don't see it because if you run, then you become persona non grata to Trump and the whole Trump movement.
That's true.
And that forecloses any sort of administration position. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just. Then you're really spelling your political death. Whereas if you stay out, then you can live to fight another day in, the next go round. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.